Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. When this timer hits 9 minutes and 55 seconds in this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin immediately implementing. The podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, or life hacks, visit yourbetteryou.info. Thank you for joining me on the journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. There seems to be a lot of just seemingly crazy going on right now. As we are looking past, while I was recording this podcast this morning, we are a weekend past two major mass shootings in two major-ish cities here in the United States, El Paso and Dayton, Ohio. And then we are 2 weekends away from a shooting in California at a festival. So we have three major shootings in the span of about 8-ish days, and two of them happening in about 12 hours. And along top of that, in the week we've had since those shootings happened, a lot of weird incidents of guns and weird incidents of people doing weird things in certain situations. It seems like the world is falling apart, although that's what it seems like. That's not the case. In general, more people are doing more great things than even before because there's more people around, more of them do great things. Percentage-wise, the crime is more or less where it should be, and the incidents that are happening are a little elevated, but not so much out of the realm of the insanity it seems like. What makes it seem like it's more insane, what makes it seem like it's much more intense, is actually the fact that we have the communication devices to talk about these things in detail so much faster. There once was a time where something happened in your neighborhood and it took a couple hours for everyone in the neighborhood to call around to tell folks what was happening. And then you had to wait until the evening paper or the morning paper to find details. And of course, the 6 o'clock news and maybe the 10 o'clock news were only shots of getting what was going to happen. So everything had to be gathered and put together as one big piece and prepared for one big presentation where everyone went to receive the information. Now 24 news networks literally have people on the air 24/7. So if something happens anywhere in the world, we're talking about it. And we're talking about it in detail. Very deep and sometimes very dark detail. This week's lesson is about coping with a lot of the noise. And I'm going to call it noise because it is what it is. I do other podcasts and other projects on messaging and making sure that your message is properly formed, properly vetted, and being properly performed to people. And so with that, all the messaging I've been hearing about all of these problems, which are actual problems, has really gotten to me. They've been really, really, really bugging me in the way things are going. Because it's not about the effectiveness of getting the message out and spreading the message, but it actually has been the message that's actually been spread. Now, granted, we have a very odd, maybe it's not so odd, but it seems odd, political divide right now, where the way people think on different sides of different ideologies gets people extremely heated extremely quickly. So if political correctness is one thing, being political is a totally different animal these days. But that doesn't stop the way that we are discussing things and fighting over things, facts, for example, of how things are working. So right now, I want to talk to you about messaging. This is going to be an odd messaging crossover for the podcast, but it really is about putting out the right messages in the right times. That's something that really is big about your development, because one thing you'll have an issue with as you develop is convincing people that you have not necessarily changed, or if you have, you've just basically gotten better. You're not becoming a different person, and other people should not be scared of the new you. So let's start right now with the actual message that we are taking in, the things we are receiving. You can only deal with the information that you have. You can only work things out with the information that you receive, because information that you don't receive is things that you're making off the top of your head. And if it's off the top of your head, then it might as well be a fairy tale. It might as well be a story, which are great, but not very good for telling your actual story, unless your story is, I want to tell stories about fairy tales. Getting an actual message across to people, telling people about you, for example, the changes that you're going through in your personal development, or the changes that your family is going through in some sort of crisis, or maybe some sort of great thing. requires the right messaging, the right words, the right actions, the right demeanor. If someone is smiling at you while giving you very bad news, you know something's weird, something's up, because that's not how things happen. If someone's talking very, very fast, but trying to relay something that's really kind of slow and dull, you know that there's something wrong and they're trying to mix something in the message. The way you deliver your message, the way you actually go about telling what you're going to tell, is a very important thing. So, number one, don't try to put on a front for people that don't need a front. It's one thing to try to relay to people who you don't want to worry that there's no need to worry, even when there are needs to worry. But it's something totally different when you don't need to phase that out. You don't need to fake that. If something is serious, let people know that what you're doing is serious. If something is lighthearted, then the tone can be lighthearted. The tone can be light. The tone can be happy and upbeat. But if something is really going on, something really is a bother, a problem, don't try to sugarcoat it. Tell them exactly what it is. You can be a little somber. You don't have to be necessarily as slow and somber as I tend to be, but you can be a little somber and just say it flat out. Let them react to that tone and that news, and then move on to something else that's lighter. Bring up the situation after that. There's nothing wrong with that. But make sure that you have the right demeanor for the message that you're putting out there. If something great's happening and it's supposed to be great, let the people know that it's supposed to be great. If something that should be great happens after a great tragedy, then let people know that this is how you're feeling. I once knew a person who lost their husband in a very tragic car accident. It was really sad and really just a really bad time for this to happen for her and the rest of her family. Only to find out about 3 weeks after the accident that she was actually going to have their fourth child. So that was something that should have been a great moment for the family together. But at that point in time, she was still dealing with the future of getting past this one issue. Luckily, she had lots of friends, lots of family around her to support her. But this is something that she had a hard time struggling with, just getting out the news. She was afraid to tell the rest of her children just because of what happened. So this was a very struggling, stressful moment on this one that they had to work through. And she did, because she had the right tone, the right message. She was dealing with a sadness, and this supposed gladness was not overcoming the sadness. And she related that way, and she got the help she needed to work through that one. So make sure that you're doing the right tone in issues, because it makes a difference, and try to cover things up. Make sure you're actually telling people the truth, the facts, the details. Part of the problem with the way I am seeing the news and news information being played out these days is the fact that it's not pure information. It's conjecture, it's emotion, it's thought processes that don't necessarily go with the facts. It's a lot of people putting in a lot of punditry into the basic message, as opposed to this happened here, here's what I think about it. It's this is what you think about this happening here. That sounds kind of subtle, but when you're putting out the opinion before the fact, it makes it hard to figure out for some people what part of the opinion is opinion and what part of the fact is fact. So make sure you're telling people the right message, the exact points first, before you get into the feelings on it. Let them react to what's going on, and then let them react to how you're dealing with it, how you're feeling about it. And finally, just let them react. Let the people react to whatever it is you're saying. Let whatever comes natural to them be natural, because it might not seem like they're reacting the way they should, because maybe they aren't, but they are, in fact, reacting the way they must, because they are. Take into account every single person and their personalities as they react to what you're saying. This is a difficult thing to do, making sure people are actually acting properly in these situations, or reacting properly in these situations. But it's up to them to find their own thoughts and processes to react to what you're doing. You can only make it easier by giving them the right message to react to. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. Because of what happened last week and not being prepared with an episode in the can because of a very busy day, I went ahead and recorded a second message this week. And this week's message is essentially 2 weeks out of phase because the things that happened were 2 weeks ago. But we're doing it on the lower grade equipment, if you will. So it sounds a little different than normal. If you're new to this, we normally record this on much snazzier equipment. This week we were in a pinch, or 2 weeks ago we were in a pinch. So we just sort of did what we had to do to get it done. But you can check out more of this podcast and more of my sister podcast for this called Steps to Your Better You. This one here, 10-minute life lesson, can give you a life lesson in 10 minutes. That one gives you one in 90 seconds. They both are living at yourbetteryou.info, and you can find them pretty much anywhere your favorite podcasts are found. We're all over the internets that way. Also at yourbetteryou.info, you can find information about me and how I can help you be your better you, how I can help you in coaching. This is for personal and professional development. If you're looking for media coaching and talking on that, the messaging stuff, I'll get to that in a moment. But yourbetteryou.info is the home for my personal development work. So we have items that are practically for free or actually for free, plus coaching sessions for personal one-on-one coaching and group coaching that we set up along the way. Find information about that at as I said, yourbetteryou.info. I also do media stuff as well and podcast coaching, part of my just background. You can find information on that at podcastguidancefoundhere.com. And although it says podcast, there's a podcast called Mastering Your Message, where a big part of what I do is making sure people are delivering their message properly. Podcast just seems to be my bag these days. My cup of tea is putting people in a podcast. So that's the main focus. What I'm doing is producing messages that go recorded in audio form. That's just how it is. You can find more information about me in general. I know too many calls to action this week at jclevelandpayne.net. Email this show at yourbetteryouinfo@gmail.com. Email me directly at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com. Share this podcast and share Your Better You with all the people you know looking to work on improvement, whether it's for personal development or trying to upgrade their game at work or professional development. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on these lessons. You only need 10 minutes to get a life lesson you can use immediately. So that's the kicker of this thing. That's what makes this thing so unique, so special. So come back next week. I'll prove it to you in 10 minutes. Another great life lesson from the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast, brought to you by yourbetteryou.info.